ABC Listen. Podcasts, radio, news, music and more.
Hi, it's PK here, host of the new politics podcast, Politics Now. I'll be joined by the ABC's sharpest political minds to break down the biggest stories of the day. It's called Politics Now, and you can find it and follow it on the ABC Listen app.
A short time ago, the U.S. military carried out massive precision strikes on the three key nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime: Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan.
Congratulations, President Trump. Your bold decision to target Iran's nuclear facilities with the awesome and righteous might of the United States will change history.
The United States has joined the war with Iran. In the early hours of Sunday morning, American warplanes dropped bombs on 3 Iranian nuclear sites. A few hours later, Donald Trump addressed the American people from the White House.
Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. For 40 years, Iran has been saying death to America, death to Israel. There will be either peace or there will be tragedy for Iran far greater than we have witnessed over the last 8 days. Remember, there are many targets left. But if peace does not come quickly, we will go after those other targets with precision, speed, and skill.
The Israeli leader, Benjamin Netanyahu, responded with praise for Donald Trump.
History will record that President Trump acted to deny the world's most dangerous regime the world's most dangerous weapons. His leadership today has created a pivot of history that can help lead the Middle East and beyond to a future of prosperity and peace. President Trump and I often say, peace through strength. First comes strength, then comes peace. And tonight, President Trump and the United States acted with a lot of strength.
Today, international relations expert Rajan Menon on the widening conflict and what comes next. I'm Sam Hawley on Gadigal Land in Sydney. This is ABC News Daily. Rajan, this is what they call an escalation, to put it mildly.
No question.
Tell me what he's done. What has Donald Trump done here?
Around 8 p.m.-ish, we got news that the attack had commenced, and there are 3 facilities that have been attacked. One is Fordow, which is about 60 miles south of Tehran. This is the one that's built into the side of a mountain, and it's buried about the centrifuges that are there, estimated to be about 3,000. Now, what are centrifuges? They're basically machines that spin uranium at very high speeds and to enrich it up to weapons grade if necessary. The second one is in Natanz. This is the second site is called Natanz. The third site that has been hit is in near the city of Isfahan in central Iran, and it is a kind of research center, not a centrifuge plant per se. But the significance of the American involvement is that the U.S. has what's called a massive ordnance penetrator that is so heavy, it's 30,000 pounds. It can only be carried by our B-2 Spirit stealth aircraft. So the Israelis have nothing like it. And the way this is supposed to work, and I say supposed to because it's never been used in kinetic action, that is in wartime action. So the thing weighs about 30,000 pounds, but the explosives within it are only about 5,000 pounds. So the whole idea is that it's dropped from the B-2, right, the stealth bomber, and it travels because of its weight at lightning speed down to the target, and then can also be guided because of its tail fins through GPS. The thinking is that this bomb either on a one-time basis or through follow-on strikes aimed at the hole that the first bomb has created, can take out Fordo. There is a debate about this, and I'm not a scientist, but some people say that Fordo may be actually beyond the reach of even the massive ordnance penetrator. So that's the technical side of things, if you will. The question now is what the Iranians do.
Yeah, and let's come to talk about what Iran's response might be and what it's actually capable of in a moment. We don't know at this point, of course, what sort of damage has been caused to these nuclear facilities, and perhaps we won't know. Will we ever really know the answer to that, whether or not the nuclear program has been wiped out completely?
Well, you and I, in other words, people like you and I, even though we follow the news closely, will not know for a very, very long time because there will be no ground presence allowed by the Iranians, obviously, and only they will know. But the real question, Sam, is this. Okay, so even if you destroy a substantial part of Natanz and Fordo and damage the vast majority of centrifuges, will the message that Iran receives be, well, we've been hit so hard that we'd better back off the entire nuclear program? Or will it be that this would never have been done to us had we had nuclear weapons? And will it cause them to rebuild with the view now of acquiring nuclear weapons? At the moment, they are party to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. But now, and I'm not predicting this, but I would not be surprised if they say we are exiting the NPT, the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which is essentially a declaration that they will acquire nuclear weapons. The other thing that they could do is to sort of declare a no-go zone in the Straits of Hormuz. About 20 million barrels a day of oil goes through the straits. Then there's the question of whether the Houthis of Yemen, whether the Houthis will say, well, in solidarity with Iran, we are going to declare the Red Sea off limits. So that's a possibility. We won't see all this play out for a very, very long time. But I think there's no question that the Iranians now have their back to the wall, and they are not going to now say, all right, we are going to come to the table and sign a deal with you whereby we decide to dismantle our entire program.
All right. Well, Rajan, of course, it was more than 2 decades ago that the US was in this position, since George W. Bush, of course, ordered an invasion of Iraq, seeking weapons of mass destruction. Donald Trump, it seems, is in an eerily similar position right now.
Correct. And there is another parallel to Iraq. That is, Iraq was justified both in terms of the Saddam's alleged possession of nuclear materials, perhaps even nuclear weapons. And also, it was said he was this bloodthirsty dictator and he had to go. Never mind that there were periods when the U.S. cooperated with him. So what happened in the wake of the invasion was there was massive chaos in Iraq, as you know, and huge fighting. Thousands of people died. Many American soldiers died. The question now before us is this attack by Trump a prelude to what's known as regime change? Because the Israeli position now is the only way to absolutely make certain that there is a non-nuclear weapons wielding Iran is through regime change. Now, the problem with regime change is the expectation might be that you decapitate the current theocratic government and some other government, if not democratic, then kind of nationalist but stable, but not pursued nuclear weapons comes to power. Well, that's one possibility. The second possibility is all bloody hell breaks out. And this is a country of something like 90 million people. It has 6, 7, I can't remember exactly, neighbors directly adjacent to it. And it shares territorial waters with another 6. And itself is a major oil producer. So we're not talking about, the Middle Eastern equivalent of Liechtenstein or Tasmania, for example.
Well, Trump says, of course, that he's not considering US troops on the ground in Iran at this point. What about the legality of all of this, though, Rajan, under international law? Because US intelligence, it hadn't shown, had it, that Iran was on the brink of developing a nuclear weapon, although the language of the administration is changing on that, isn't it? Of the American Trump administration.
Right. So the International Atomic Energy Agency put out a report recently. You can get it on the web. It's about 20 pages. And what it says is Iran has been less than forthcoming about revealing the extent of its program. But it says Iran is at about 60% enrichment. That brings it much closer to the bomb than we'd like to be. But there is no evidence that they are racing toward it. Now, Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence here in the United States, said something roughly similar. And Trump was not at all happy with her. And she's now then run for cover and said, well, I was misrepresented. Actually, Iran could be within striking distance of a bomb. So there's going to be a big controversy now about why it is that we're doing this. One thing is for certain, and you asked about international law, right? This can't be seen as a defensive war in the sense that country A is attacked by country B and country A responds. That is allowed under international law. It can't even be seen as a war where country B is taking self-evident measures to attack country A. Everyone sees it, country A sees it, and country A decides to get the jump. It can't even be seen as a preventive war. So a preventive war is like the Putin's war in Ukraine. He imagined that someday Ukraine would enter NATO, and he decided, well, I'm going to attack, right? I'm not sure what it is that we're preventing here, because Iran hasn't threatened to attack the United States.
All right, well, how do you think this will go down among the American people? And, of course, Trump's MAGA base that was already split on whether this would be the right course of action.
Well, this will be a big test because, as you know, Trump came to power in the first election, and in the second, during the campaign, he uttered much the same narrative, that I'm not going to be the president of intervention and forever wars and regime change. These are ruinous wars on which we've spent countless lives and huge amounts of treasure. I'm not that kind of president. So when the Iran crisis started ratcheting up and Trump intimated that he might exercise, if you will, the military option, his supporters split. Some of them who are very, very close to Israel. Some of these are Jewish groups and organizations, but others are evangelical Christians, like, for example, our ambassador in Israel, Mike Huckabee, the former governor of Arkansas. He wrote to Trump recently saying that Trump had been put on earth to save the Israeli people and all of this, and that he should rise to the occasion. This was this theological exhortation. So there's that group, right? And then the other group, represented by people such as Tucker Carlson, and a group that is supposed to be in sympathy with J.D. Vance, is a quasi-isolationist group. It is very much against these kinds of wars. Now, Vance will never break with Trump, but that same cannot be said for Tucker Carlson or another important spokesperson of the isolationist group, one Steve Bannon. They've already been speaking out. So the question is, will there be an open split, or will even the isolationist MAGA people decide that, well, Trump can do a lot of other things that we like on immigration and so on and so forth, and we're not going to openly break with him? It remains to be seen.
All right. Well, Rajan, of course, this is a very different conflict now that the United States has entered the fray. You mentioned shipping, of course, and that Iran could disrupt shipping routes, but what sort of capacity does it now have to fight back? What do you think we should expect on that front?
It can't do anything to the United States. It doesn't have the capacity to do that. It could attack American bases. There are approximately 30,000 to 40,000 American servicemen and women in various locations around the Middle East. It could target that. It may not do that because it may not want to bring the United States directly into the war any further. But what I expect it will do is to continue rocket attacks against Israel and ratchet up rocket attacks. And the Israelis, while they've given Iran a bloody nose, one should note that a number of Iranian missiles have managed to penetrate Israel's multi-layered defense system. They're supposed to have one of the most sophisticated air defense systems in the world. But we have video and photographs showing that there have been hits on Israel. And Israel is a country, I don't know if this comparison will mean much to you, but it's about the size of the American state of New Jersey. It's a very small country.
All right, well, Donald Trump, a man who says he would end wars as president, has now escalated a conflict. Is that it for the US, Rajan, or is it really now drawn into this that it will have to keep supporting Israel until this conflict is over, whenever that might be?
I think, he's taken the first step. And he's now obligated to think about, well, if the first step doesn't go the way I wanted to, will I take the second step? He's now, as it were, all in. He has no way out. He can't say, well, I've done this strike and I'm going to now completely wash my hands of this, because the question then will be asked, well, what was the purpose? How do we know the strike was successful? How much does this help Israelis, and so on? Now, Bibi Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, is obviously doing cartwheels. I'm sure he's quite happy about what has happened. I think in general, the American public, there may be a kind of a rally around the flag effect, even though we've not been attacked. And immediately there'll be no plummeting of the polls, of Trump's polls. But this could go south in a number of ways. And if it begins to really muck up the economy, at that point, bread and butter issues will register in opinion polls.
Rajan Menon is a Professor Emeritus of International Relations at the City College of New York and a Senior Research Fellow at Columbia University's Saltzman Institute of War and Peace Studies. This episode was produced by Sydney Peed. Audio production by Sam Dunn. Our supervising producer is David Cody. I'm Sam Hawley. Thanks for listening.